every woman I know, pretty much every woman I know has been on a diet, and pretty much none of them have stuck or worked. Why is that the case?
Great question. And I think for a long time, we have been looking at keeping healthy in terms of healthy weight by purely restricting what we eat.
Yeah.
And that works. And it is how eventually you lose weight, by calorie restriction, little by little every day. But until you get your gut signals, which actually control appetite, sufficiently high, you really can't get control of your brain otherwise. So this is what we always say at Elcella. It's not about willpower, it's about gut power. And for a long time, we were thinking that actually all of your control about appetite, what you eat, what you crave, feeling hungry, feeling full, all came from your brain.
Yeah.
And sure, the thoughts originate there, but those thoughts are actually regulated by hormones that come from your gut. So it's a very gut first approach that we should think about when we're looking at how do we manage weight, how do we manage to lose weight. Without a healthy gut, you can't really get there.
So, for example, I have a lot of friends that will say after even they've kind of eaten like a full meal, they'll still be hungry. And I even felt this as well. I'll eat a whole meal, I'll still be hungry. What is happening in that scenario?
Yeah. So just after you eat, your stomach fills with the food. So your stomach is like a balloon. It's stretchy. So when it fills up, it gets stretchy and it expands. And that expansion actually triggers a response in your brain to tell you that, you know what, you're done. You're full. You can stop eating this meal. But that feeling of fullness that lasts for hours and should hopefully last for hours actually comes from your gut. And in order to get those signals to come from your gut and go to your brain, you actually have to have a certain nutritional balance and certain types of nutrients in your diet that have to reach the lower parts of your gut. It's the lower part of your gut, and it's called the colon, which is about 6 meters down from your mouth, so it's quite way down, that actually is a huge store of hormones like GLP-1 that people are talking about, but also other gut hormones like PYY that actually suppress appetite. Now, without the correct nutrients getting to that part of the gut, you're not able to release those hormones. They don't come to your brain. And so even after you're eating a full meal, you feel full and you stop, but very quickly afterwards, you're actually still feeling hungry. And that's probably because the nutrients in that meal were not sufficient to make it all the way down to that part of the gut. And it didn't trigger those longer term signals of fullness, which is regulated by your gut hormones.
So if it's because the nutrients didn't kind of reach that point, are we eating the wrong things? Is that kind of what that?
Yeah, I think so. Especially in this day and age, and we've got so many processed foods and so many additions to our foods that make it hyper palatable. So foods are like really soft, they're easy to eat, they smell really good, they taste really good, but often they're low in fiber and they're probably low in protein. And they don't therefore make it that far down the gut because they're so easy to digest. And so the upper part of your gut digests things very quickly. And so you do feel full, but not long enough, for example, for 2-3 hours post meal that you can go, okay, I don't need a snack, I'm good. So yeah, definitely foods in the modern day are kind of working against us. They're not helping us stay fuller for longer. And because of the fact that they just don't have enough fiber, enough protein, and they're just too palatable.
So would one solution to the weight gain problem be to eat the kind of, I guess most people would say now, like whole foods. So if you were to eat the whole foods and everything, if you were to change your diet today from ultra processed to eating whole foods, would that mean that you'd immediately kind of receive those fullness signals?
It would start to help. Yeah, it wouldn't happen immediately because your gut has to change because your gut probably, especially the lower part, hasn't actually been stimulated with those nutrients for a while.
Yeah.
So we call those sorts of cells, they're called L cells, are really low down in your gut. They release hormones like GLP-1 and PYY, and they are actually stimulated by certain types of nutrients that you get in your diet. And perhaps we're definitely attuned to that. We've evolved as humans to respond to such nutrients. But if you have neglected your diet such that those nutrients are not in it, then those cells are essentially sleepy and they need waking up. And that takes time. But we absolutely advocate for eating whole foods. So I would always like to say vegetables with the skin on, vegetables that are not so heavily cooked that they're super soft, fibrous foods that actually make it down to your gut, to the lower part of your gut, and that can stimulate those cells to release those hormones to help you feel full.
So we can naturally also release GLP-1s.
We have a GLP-1. That's the crazy thing. People are like, GLP-1's medicine. No, GLP-1 is a hormone. And we all have this hormone in our gut. It doesn't matter what BMI you are. You might be a BMI in the really healthy range. You might have a BMI in the obese range. We still have GLP-1 in our bodies, in our gut specifically. And what we really need to do in order to better regulate appetite naturally is to get our own GLP-1 out of those cells, L cells. And so then they can reach the brain and help you feel full.
Okay, so how do you naturally get the GLP-1s coming through?
So we all have them, and they're all triggered by nutrients. So basically, L cells are sitting in your gut, and they're waiting to taste certain types of nutrients. So my research, which I conducted at Queen Mary University of London for the last 15 years, was really focused on understanding how nutrients in our diets actually interact with our gut. So for a long time, we were thinking that nutrients, you just eat food and they get absorbed and then it turns into energy and that's it. But actually your body and your gut is more sophisticated than that. In fact, there's essentially a lock and key mechanism. So nutrients act as keys that unlock certain pathways in your gut, including releasing GLP-1 so you can feel full. So it makes sense because when you eat, your body needs to digest the food, but it also needs to tell your brain that you're full. And so the way the gut does that is by tasting nutrients. So imagine the nutrients are the key. They fit onto this molecular lock that sits on these cells in your gut that release GLP-1, but they can't release GLP-1 until that unlocking mechanism happens. And that happens with nutrients. And so for years, we've been studying how human gut responds to certain types of nutrients. And we found that there's a specific combination of nutrients that are super good at unlocking those cells so they can release the GLP-1 and PYY, which is another very important hormone that is so good at suppressing appetite. And actually our body has about 10 hormones that we know of that suppress appetite and only 2 that increase appetite. So humans are actually really well wired to survive very low food environments, famines, and where there are, where we had to hunt for food and there wasn't food, couldn't just go to the Sainsbury's around the corner and, get all your snacks. So your body's actually super attuned to responding to nutrients. It's really good at helping you stay full. It's just about flicking the switch so your body's able to do that better. And we all have the capacity to do it.
Okay, so how? How do you do it? How do you flip the switch?
Yeah, so look, your gut can taste so many different types of nutrients, from proteins to various types of fibers to various types of medium chain fatty acids, long chain fatty acids that come from certain types of food like coconuts and flaxseed oils and omega-3s, etc. All the things that we know are actually good for you. But ultimately the trick is to have that type of food in such a way that it actually reaches that part of your gut. So you have to kind of have a combination of things in your diet. You can't just go, I'm just going to eat all protein. Like, no, that's not going to work. You need to have that's why a rainbow plate is such a great idea. You have different colors, different sorts of fibers and proteins and carbohydrates that all help to get some of those nutrients down to the lower part of your gut to help release the GLP-1 and the PYY and other hormones that help suppress appetite.
Okay, tiny pause. If you want to be part of what we're building here, beyond just like watching, there's a link in the description and you can basically vote on guests. You can send in your most unfiltered questions for us to ask on air and tell us what brands you want us to go bother to get free stuff for you on your behalf. Genuinely, I think once we get enough people, we're going to start approaching like health brands and saying that our community wants something. So we'll try and get you discounts, samples, early access, I don't know, whatever. But we need the numbers first, so subscribe, join the list and tell us what you want. Okay, back to it. So if it has to get to the lower part of your gut, what does that mean? And how do you actually, what's the difference between if somebody were to just, eat protein? Because I've seen this diet so often now where it's like, oh, just focus on protein, you'll never get fat from protein, firstly, is that true? And secondly, what does it mean to get your nutrients down?
Well, as a gut scientist, I always advocate for balance.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as just one thing or just one type of food and nothing else. It's really important to have a balance, unless, of course, you're, have food intolerances. But you have to have a combination of protein and fiber. And the reason that you need all of those things is because there's different parts of digestion that happen in your gut. So your gut is not just your tummy. Your gut is composed of your esophagus, which is the throat, like the gullet that shunts food between your mouth and your stomach. Your stomach is where there's a lot of acid. It's really good at breaking down proteins. And then you have your small intestine and you have your large intestine. And the large intestine is the area that we have found and others have found to be a very important side of appetite regulation because it's a hub of these hormones, GLP-1, for example. So in order to really suppress appetite well and for hours in a day, you need to have the types of foods that can make it all the way down there. And so you've got to deal with the stomach, you've got to deal with the digestive processes that happen before the colon. So that's why fiber is such a great idea, because it's actually really hard to break down fiber, and only this bacteria in your colon can actually break down fiber and use it themselves. They use it for food, and that produces some waste products that actually our own cells really like, and that releases GLP-1 as well.
Oh, so eating fiber will literally release GLP-1?
Well, yeah, eventually. Yeah, eating fiber will help your gut microbiome to break it down. Then they'll produce some other waste products that we respond to, and that releases GLP-1. Certain other types of nutrients. It's not just there's a whole group of nutrients, but you really have to make sure they get down to the right part of your gut, which is the colon.
Okay, so if I wanted to do this naturally, what would I do if I wanted to kind of initiate this process?
So the best thing to do is have a rainbow diet. So to have fruits and vegetables, I always like to have them with the skin on, because the skin on fruits and vegetables are difficult to digest by anything other than your bacteria. So they make it that far down your gut.
Yeah.
Proteins are really good. Again, they are good at surviving some of those digestive processes, and they can reach that part of your gut. And then certain types of medium and long chain fatty acids. So omega-3 foods, so salmon, fish that's in oily fish like mackerel, again, have these components within them that are very good at switching on the cells that release GLP-1.
And what are on the opposite end of the spectrum, what are the foods that are going to keep me hungry longer and keep me eating more?
Basically processed foods, anything with a high level of what's called free sugar. So sugar that's just in there, that's going to immediately get out into your bloodstream, and it's not digested. It's digested super fast. You'll feel full quickly in, maybe 20 minutes, half an hour, you'll feel good, but you will not feel full for longer. And that's what causes all of the extra weight gain. Because to be honest, snacking, it's a big problem. If you're able to just cut down snacking, you're going to cut down quite a few kilocalories per day. It's going to make a big difference. So just staying full between, those bigger meals of the day is a big win.
So you've been researching kind of natural weight loss for 15 plus years now, right?
Yeah.
What initially got you into it?
So we weren't looking at natural weight loss at all. We were trying to understand what happens in human gut. It's surely a more complicated system than just food going in and then being absorbed, and that's it. So we started to ask those really deeper questions that no one else had bothered asking at that point, which is, how do nutrients actually interact with our cells in our gut? And it turned out to be quite an interesting answer, something we didn't expect. And there was a very molecular process that happens whereby nutrients are essentially tasted by your gut. So you taste food in your mouth, and that sends a signal to your brain of sweet, bitter, umami, etc. But the tasting that happens in your gut through different nutrients, that signal is actually about suppressing hunger. So your gut sends you signals to your brain to say you're full. or
Yeah.
you're hungry because you haven't had the right nutrients. And so the gut is actually waiting to taste certain types of nutrients.
Oh, I see.
And then once it does taste it, it goes, oh, okay, cool. I'm going to release these hormones that help me feel full because I've received what I need right now.
So when you're constantly eating ultra processed foods, which have none of the nutrients, that's why you're staying hungry, because your gut is never telling you that you're full because you haven't got it.
You haven't given it the right tools to stay full.
So how did you come? So you created kind of a natural weight loss. How would you call it? Would you call it a supplement? Or
Yeah, so it's a supplement. But again, the story goes that we were just studying how the gut actually interacts with nutrients.
Yeah.
And then as we were doing that, we realized there was a certain type and a certain combination of nutrients that your gut just loved. And it hyper excited the cells to super release GLP-1
Oh, wow.
and another hormone called PYY that suppresses appetite. And so when we saw that data, we were like, what? This is not what we expected. And we were studying human gut tissue. So we weren't studying animal models, we weren't studying mice, we weren't using AI. We were actually getting tissue from patients who were donating parts of their tissue after their surgeries.
Yeah.
And we were rushing it back to the lab to study it while it was still very much alive.
Wow.
And basically replicating what would happen in a person, but doing it in a very molecular way so we can understand exactly what happens at this level of the gut. So your gut is basically a tube. It's a long tube, changes shapes every now and then, but it's essentially a tube, and the nutrients interact with that like your skin. So it's like that. And so when we tried to figure out, well, surely there's something going on here more than it's just touching the skin. It's actually interacting with the gut, those nutrients. And when those interactions happened, we were so surprised to see this big surge in these hormones from a certain combination of nutrients. And so that's when we realized that, we thought, oh my God, this is so exciting, because why do you have to inject yourself with artificial GLP-1?
Yeah.
When you already have these hormones in your gut, and you can get them to come out of the gut and come out of those cells naturally using this very cool combination of nutrients.
And what is the combination of nutrients?
Sure. So we actually have studied medium and long chain fatty acids. They are in certain types of foods, basically, but there's a very molecular process to it. But ultimately, the way to unlock them, we found, was to use a specific ratio of medium and long chain fatty acids that are found in, for example, coconut oil, MCT oil, and flaxseed oil.
And I was reading kind of some of the reviews, and I mean the reviews are pretty crazy that you guys get. So there'll be people that have said that they've struggled with weight loss for years and years, and suddenly, even the food noise subsides. And I saw that was a really common review that you got.
Yeah.
Like, the food noise subsides. What is food noise, and what's happening at that moment where they say for the first time they're not thinking about food 24/7?
Excellent question. So food noise is that constant chatter in your mind about food. You're thinking about food. You're thinking about when you're eating next. You're planning your next meal. You're thinking, am I hungry? What do I want for a snack? It's like, should I go to the fridge?
Yeah.
What should I buy for dinner? What should I order for dinner? Like, it's just constant chit chat in your mind, and then you can't stop it. And for a long time, people thought, it's in my head. It's in my head. It's in my head. It is in your head, but it's because you haven't got the signals from your gut going from the gut hormones, to your brain to help you suppress and calm those chit chat down. So when people say, oh my God, for years I had this noise in my head and I couldn't control it, it's because they were never getting the right signals from the gut. So that's why we keep saying it's not willpower, it's gut power. So you really have to get your gut on your side. And what we do with Elcella is take our research that's taken 15 years of preclinical testing and validation and discovery, then showing it actually works in people, so in separate clinical trials, to show that actually people do eat less, and, super important, their GLP-1 and PYY hormone levels increase as a result of treatment versus a placebo. So that's how it works. And then seeing it actually work in people in real life, oh my God, we couldn't be happier. We're always in tears when we see and hear the success stories. And it's so, so exciting. And look, fundamentally, we want to change how people think about their relationship with food.
Yeah.
It's not because you have poor willpower. It's not because you're just bad at controlling your thoughts. It's because your gut is not on your side right now. And what we do is we help using a very targeted formulation that's delivered specifically to the colon. So our capsules are specially coated, so they only break down once they reach your colon, which is a specific pH. So it's like the perfect conditions for those capsules to open. And then when they do, those nutrients end up and then they go and excite the L cells to release the GLP-1 and PYY. So the lock and key mechanism switches on, the cells get super excited, like, woohoo, we got the nutrients we love. Releases GLP-1, releases the PYY, they go into your bloodstream, go into your brain, and then you feel magically full. But that's just how the physiology works.
And so how much weight do people kind of lose? I mean, actually, also comparatively, I guess, to the synthetic injectable GLP-1s, what's the comparison?
Yeah. So we've done a consumer trial and we found that within 12 weeks, people lose on average 6 to 8 kilograms.
Wow.
And that's basically on par with injectables. But it varies between people.
Yeah.
So what we want to do is have a strategy that helps people get to a healthy weight in a safe, sustainable, and gradual way.
Yeah.
You don't want to lose weight quickly, because if you lose weight quickly, you tend to lose muscle quite quickly as well, alongside the fat, and you don't want that. And so what we do at Alcella is we don't wipe out the feeling of hunger. Hunger is not the enemy. You have to feel hungry so you can fuel your body.
Yeah.
But what is the enemy is overeating, is not being able to control those cravings. It's having too much sugar. It's having that food noise. And so that's what Alcella does. Alcella calms all those things, cravings, food noise. It changes people's preferences as well. They don't want to eat sugary foods anymore. And they also have reduced alcohol cravings, which is also very calorific. And so that's what we do. We're not here to suppress appetite to zero. We want people to be able to have nutrition. You don't want to have nutritional deficiency. And so we work quite differently to the injectables. And we always ask the question of, if you have the capacity, if your body can do it, why do it artificially?
And what is your perspective on doing it artificially?
So we think for certain parts of the population who need it medically, the injectables are a great option.
Yeah.
When there's a significant amount of weight that needs to be lost, there's people who have obesity, plus they have comorbidities like type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular diseases, liver diseases. There's a whole host of things that go hand in hand oftentimes with obesity that weight loss can really make a big impact on. But if you don't fall into that category and you still need to lose some weight, maybe you're pre-diabetic, maybe you're just in the overweight category, and maybe you just want to lose a few kilos gradually in order to feel good about yourself again. That's where injectables are probably not the recommended strategy, and they're certainly not clinically recommended at all, and where a product like ours makes a difference.
And I think I read another review which kind of said that for the first time somebody had picked up a tin of biscuits and actually put them back rather than eating the whole thing, which I can relate to as well. I feel like so often I'll just if I grab a bag of chips, I'm just going to finish it.
Yeah.
I'm never going to put it back halfway, even if I'm full. I don't even know what that would feel like. So what's happening in that moment that the person chooses to put it back versus finishing?
So I think it's a difference between habit and actually listening to your gut signals. So once your gut signals have reached the optimal level, your brain has that capacity to go, no, I'm actually full.
Yeah.
And then you're deciding between, is this habit or is this actual hunger? And then when you think about that, you're like, actually, no, I'm not hungry. And so it's actually an indication that their gut signals are working really well, and they're listening to their body as well. That's really important. It's so important to actually look at the difference between what you think is real hunger versus actual just habit.
And have you seen any kind of negative repercussions of the synthetic, of things like Ozempic, of all the injectables, that you guys don't see with the natural variant? Because it does seem like it's kind of taken over the entire world, and a lot of people who aren't meant to be using are using them, and all of these things.
Yeah. We don't see that, because the thing about Alcella is it works with your body. So your body has a natural ceiling. So we only ever have a certain number of these L cells that have GLP-1. And once you've released it all, it takes a little while for your gut to replenish those and get more GLP-1, because your body doesn't want you to stop eating.
Yeah.
It doesn't want you to do that. It wants you to do it at regular intervals when it needs the energy. And so that's a big difference between what we do and what the medicines do. One is a very powerful hit that's, many times higher in terms of how much GLP-1 actually should be in your body.
Yeah.
Versus what we do, which is just getting your body to do what it does just a little bit better.
So kind of the differences with the synthetic version, you might actually, even if you need a little bit more hunger, you need to fuel yourself a little bit more. Obviously with the synthetic version, it's uncontrollably giving you too much appetite suppressant.
Yeah, basically.
And naturally that doesn't occur.
Totally. It doesn't happen normally. You're never going to be like that for like 7 days. And that's usually how long these drugs last in your body. Now, GLP-1, the natural GLP-1, only sticks around in your body once it comes out of the L cell for about 10 minutes max. Whereas the drug GLP-1 that you inject into your body stays around for 7 days.
Oh, wow.
So it's a lot longer, and it goes way beyond normal physiology. But like I said, in certain instances, that's helpful, where you really need to regulate blood glucose levels. So, the GLP-1 medications were designed initially for type 2 diabetics. And so, there are certain scenarios in which having that level of GLP-1 makes sense, especially if you're type 2 diabetic. But I think that the usage and the popularity of the GLP-1s beyond the medical need, perhaps, is a little worrying. And
you mentioned also that there's sometimes what comes with like the synthetic version is things like muscle loss and things like that. Why is that occurring? And then do you see that in your own product as well? Like, do you also prescribe, I don't know, like the lifestyle change or?
We don't see muscle loss because muscle loss comes with the rapid weight loss. So when you stop eating, basically, for days and weeks, your body starts to think things are going really wrong. And it starts to break down fat, sure, but it also starts to break down muscle as well, to use that as energy. And if you're not replenishing your body with nutrients, then it has no choice. Whereas with L-Celler, like we say, it's not about cutting out the feeling of hunger completely. What it does, it gives you that break from snacking. It takes away the food noise. You're able to reduce your portions appropriately. And it's just, it goes hand in hand with normal physiology, normal bodily function. So people on L-Celler don't report muscle loss. They instead actually have what we call the L-Celler glow. Because when your body is actually doing things like it should, it's super optimal, and it's getting nutrients, and it's probably absorbing nutrients better than it ever did, then your hair, your skin, your nails, they also tend to grow better and look better because you've got the nutritional support you need.
And then the other kind of side effect that you mentioned was people also kind of change their eating habits. So they'll maybe eat like less sugars, things like this. What's happening there? Why is that occurring?
So sugar cravings come from usually a lack of energy control. So when you have good energy levels, it's because your blood glucose levels are nice and steady.
Right.
So if you have unsteady blood glucose levels where you're having a lot of processed sugar and then it goes whoop super high, and then your energy levels go again really super low because again the sugar gets digested so quickly that you get that quick hit and then you get another low. That means your energy levels are all over the place. It's just all up super high and then super low and then up again when you have some more sugar. It's not good. Whereas what you want is gradual energy release, so your energy levels are nice and steady. So when people take L-Celler, they find that the energy levels are actually much steadier because they're producing their own GLP-1, and GLP-1 actually is able to regulate blood sugar levels really well. That's why it was actually first used for type 2 diabetics. And so if you're doing it yourself really well, your cravings for sugar naturally go down because your energy levels are nice and steady, and you haven't crashed, to a point where like, oh my God, I really need a glucose hit. So that's the reason why when people are on L-Celler, they have less sugar cravings because actually their energy is better controlled.
So if you wanted to reduce sugar cravings, the way is also by like reducing the amount of spikes that you have, right, in your blood sugar. And what causes the spikes in blood sugar or the drops?
So when you, like I said, let's imagine you're having a chocolate bar or a really highly processed food that's very high in sugar. Your stomach immediately, as soon as the food hits the stomach, you're basically immediately releasing sugar into your bloodstream. And then you get this big high level of sugar in your body. If you're having protein and fiber-rich foods, your body is taking longer to digest it, and it slowly releases the energy. And so the energy release is much more steady and much more gradual. So just by reducing those ultra-processed foods, you can have a better control of your energy levels and your blood glucose levels, which will help you eventually get off the snacking.
Oh, okay. So if you to kind of play that back, if you focus on eating protein and fiber, then you'll basically actually also reduce the sugar cravings.
Yeah, because you're able to stay full and your energy levels are not all over the place. It's the energy level thing. It's the energy crashes that make you, reach for the Kit Kat.
And what do you think right now is the biggest misconception in the weight loss space? Because I think there's been like so many fads, so much information gets like thrown around. What's like the biggest thing that you think is?
2 things. Number 1, people have always thought that inability to control appetite is something to do with your head. It's something to do with your psychology, your behavior, and your own inability to control your thoughts. That's not true. Yes, when it comes to appetite and regulating food intake, food is a really complex thing. We, have food as a social gathering. At social gatherings, we sit down and have meals with people. There's smell, there's sight of food that, it's all part of it. But actually the biggest part, and obviously I'm biased because I'm a gut scientist, but the data shows that the biggest regulator of appetite is actually gut hormone signals. So it's not in your head, it's in your gut. So that's the biggest misconception, and I really want to take the stigma away from people, and we talk to customers and they, like you say on the reviews, they struggled for years with this and they blame themselves. It's like it's not you, it's your gut signals, and we need to really improve those. And then the second misconception is that GLP-1 is medicine. GLP-1 is a medicine in a certain way, but actually we all have GLP-1 and we have all the hormones that are being made artificially by drug companies. We all have them in our bodies. And all we need to do is get those hormones out so they have a better chance at helping us stay fuller for longer. I really want to champion that.
Would you say then, does that mean that it's entirely just about the food environment that you're kind of brought up in and that you live in that dictates whether you overeat or all these additional factors?
Well, it's not as easy as blaming your parents on that one. You can blame your parents on other things. No, not really. But look, your gut microbiome plays a big role as well. There's lots of good data to show that certain types of gut microbes actually are really helpful at regulating appetite, and others are not. So your gut microbiome plays a role. Where you grow up plays a role. What you've eaten as a child plays a role as you grow up. But ultimately, these things can actually be changed. And that's what we're trying to do at Alcella, is actually refeeding your gut with targeted nutrition. That's all based on science, all based on clinical data, to naturally get your body to do what it does best. So we all have the capacity to change. So that's the good news. And it's just about, figuring out how to do that. And as we do more research, and that's what scientists love to do, is come up with solutions. We'll come up with more solutions that can work with your body, hopefully, to support the medical side as well. There is a definite need for medical intervention for certain people, but for others, and also for people who want to even come off the GLP-1 medications, there's lots of now good data to show that once you stop, the floodgates open again, and the everything comes back, including the food noise, the cravings, and of course the weight. And so for people who don't want to take the medications for the rest of their life, they also need an exit strategy. And so your body is the exit strategy, in our opinion, and Alcella can also support that.
And so what do you think is your biggest advice for people who are coming off of synthetic GLP-1s?
My biggest advice is not to do it alone. Make sure you're doing it, doing that process of coming down the dosage with clinical support. And it's super helpful to have a soft landing, and L-Celler is a soft landing because it's able, and we have people who've come off the injectables. They're been super scared about coming off the injectables because they obviously don't want to regain the weight, and they've come onto L-Celler and they've been able to maintain that weight loss. But also they see it's like a completely different pathway. It doesn't wipe out their hunger at all. They still have a relationship with food that's good. It's just in a different way.
And kind of one of my last questions is, would you say are there any foods that you actually would say like people just should not be eating point blank?
Yes, there are. And those are really ultra processed foods, especially the ones that are really high in sugar. So I think at the supermarket you can get quite a few cakes that are pre-made, and some of those fiber bars or energy bars or muesli bars, they're so full of sugar that I would not recommend them, because they're just not, it's not worth to have a quick, sharp peak in your glucose to feel good for a little bit, to have that slump again.
And what can the people kind of look out for?
So when you go to the supermarket, if you're looking at buying pre-packaged foods, just check to see how much sugar is actually in there. It's actually really high. And some of them will say, super high in protein, but it's also quite high in sugar.
So high protein does not cancel out.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. And the packaging is also, it goes on the back of all the the social media talk about everyone should be eating this amount of protein. But probably not with all the sugars that coming along with it when it comes to some of those processed pre-packaged foods.
And as a closing question, what would you say to kind of, let's say if there's a woman watching this who has been trying to lose weight for years and years and hasn't been able to, and is now thinking of going, for example, into a synthetic alternative?
What would I say? Okay, so I think it's really important to really understand what are the medications, how do they actually work. It's really important to talk to a clinician and actually talk to somebody who is able to advise you specifically based on all of your medical history. The other thing I would say is you do have to understand that with these medications, they do work, and there's lots of great data out there. But if you want to stop, and if you do stop, there is the risk of it all coming back. So there needs to be a plan made for you to come off as well. I wouldn't recommend that people are on the medications for their entire life, because we actually don't enough data to know what that even looks like. It's only been these medications have only been around for a short time. So make sure you get the right advice, make sure it's clinical advice from a doctor, and think about the exit strategy as well.
And is there anything that we haven't covered surrounding this topic that you think
around weight management? Can I say something about for women particularly? For women, managing weight is actually not as easy as it is for men because of reproductive hormones. So changes in progesterone and estrogen levels, especially around cycles and different parts of women's lives from puberty to perimenopause and menopause, these hormones affect our appetite and they affect how hungry we feel, because at certain times of women's cycles, we need certain amounts of nutrition in order to be able to function those cycles properly. And so as women get into perimenopause and menopause, their appetite does change and what their body needs also changes. So I would say to those women, again, don't blame yourself. It is your hormones and it is these changes that are happening. And there are ways to go about regulating gut hormones without having to inject yourself. And of course, L-Celler is a great alternative for that. So we're so excited because we wanted for a long time to offer people an opportunity to get to a healthy weight without having to go down the medical route. And now that we're here, now that we have these success stories that you've mentioned, we couldn't be more excited for people to know about this, because there is an alternative. There is a way that doesn't have to, incur a medical route and some of the side effects that are really difficult to tolerate, and will help you maintain a healthy weight over life.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much for coming on, and also for, creating a product. The reviews I've read, the feedback has been pretty incredible. So I think what you're doing is really, really incredible.
Thanks so much. Lovely to be here.
Thank you for watching Good Morning Harley Street.
If you are a clinician looking to build your thought leadership, check us out on LinkedIn, Dash Angelova and Martini Sue. And if you're a clinic looking for support with your marketing or with your video assets or your sales assets, then check us out on the same platforms.